Okay, so welcome back. It's now a complete blizzard outside, so hopefully I'm going to get this finished up and get to go home soon. So what we talked about in the last slide was the kind of the high level ideas of bringing on our business analytics people together so they can have a louder voice and influence the strategy and create synergies across the organization. But now we're going to drill down again and look at some of the activities that a competency center might actually need to carry out. So we're going to talk about accessing the data. And we're going to talk about, the infrastructure that's required to analyze social media data. So it's going to be a process. So you need to actually going to understand what the process is and what the steps are. So we're going to point to technical things. We don't need to understand how to execute those technical steps, but, we need to have some kind of awareness of what they are. So I'm just going to start the slideshow again. So again, now we're back in the Christian book, and it's chapter 6. So it's about accessing social media data. So if we think about what are the challenges, there's technological challenges. It's a big thing coming up with GDPR now, this idea of privacy and compliance. So we have to respect people's rights to privacy. We can only use data for the reasons it's collected for. So we have to be very careful when we're sharing data across the organization that we're not breaching people's privacy. The other thing is, when we think about this, the 4 V's of big data, what we're really interested in is what's the veracity and the value of the data? Is it actually, good data, or is it full of noise? If I tell someone, in order to submit an assignment, they have to tick 27 different boxes and fill out 32 different forms, probably they're just going to write rubbish in most of them. And as a result, that's absolutely meaningless data. So this is the process we're going to go through. In the next little while, we're going to talk about the acquisition of data. So do we actually collect it ourselves, or do we buy it in? We have to store it. We have to, keep it safe. We have to refine it. So we need to clean it up and make it usable. And then we have to classify it. So what are the connections between the data? Then we categorize it. We link it back to its sources, so that when we actually do gather insights, we can follow them the whole way through the data back to the data. So then discovery, so, running reports, making it actually, developing insights from it. Metrics, so, using it to develop our KPIs. And, so all this results in the extraction from a data warehouse of some kind of business intelligence that we integrate into the running of the business. So we're going to talk our way through this process. So acquisition literally is the process by which we get the data. So there's all this social media data out there across Twitter, across Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat. Well, we know now that Snapchat's so over because, Cody doesn't use it anymore. But we've got, all these different platforms that, have data in different formats. And we want to get it all together so we can learn about our customers. So one thing we could do is we could buy it. So organizations like GNIP or DataSift allow us, to buy the data off them, but we could also develop our own capability. So one of the things to remember is if you buy, the format of the data structure and the output will be defined by the organizations. So you're going to have to match your processes to them, so they'll come as files ready for extraction, but you may have to buy off multiple providers, and then you may have issues around whether they're compatible or not. If you decide you're going to collect the data yourself, it may take longer. You're stuck with constant upgrades that you're going to have to do, but it makes you much more agile. You can respond to, and you can make sure that the data you have is what you need. You're not dependent on the data that other people collect. But the overall steps are the same. So, if we're monitoring, we've got listening posts, crawlers, so software that are going out across the internet and looking for information that's about us. We can have network feeds and RSS feeds. So basically we're getting updates. If something interesting happens about a particular thing, if content is posted, we get to hear about it. So I have Google alerts up on certain things that tell me whenever there's interesting articles have been produced about business intelligence, business analytics, or social media, and issues like that. So then what we have to do is we have to collect all this information into a single place. So things like files, log files, blogs, community posts, tweets, videos, pictures, all that stuff, collect it and gather it into a single place. And then with storing, we want to be able to create put it in a format that we can actually slot it in and store it. And the whole purpose of storage is so we can have easy retrieval afterwards. So something like a listening post will plug directly into a social network. So we're constantly watching for feedback about the brand, competition, market, consumer satisfaction. So for Starbucks, what are people saying about coffee? What are they saying? What are they saying about Bobby Kerr's chain of insomnia or whatever it is? What's the customer satisfaction? Like, I'm drinking coffee here at the moment. It's instant stuff and it's rotten. Like, it's making me want to go over, but there's no shop open. So, if I was on Twitter now, I'd be giving out about the quality of my coffee. And that's interesting to them, because they're saying, well, maybe there's such and such a number of people giving out about information in a certain area. We can put another shop there. So, the challenge is all this data is unstructured, semi-structured. It's evolving. It's a messy data. It's really hard to analyze. Is it positive or negative statement? I so love Nescafe. It's the best. Just feel the sarcasm dripping from my voice. I'll tell that to the computer. So you've got millions of websites that must be consumed. So it's a huge volume of data. And then it's really complex. So how do you actually visualize what you've collected? How do you make sense of it? If it's completely unstructured data, what are the important categories, that you bring together? Or what clusters emerge from the data that you can actually make sense of? So a crawler, I mentioned before, is a computer program that browses the web in a methodical, easy for you to say this, automated manner in order to gather information. So it listens, so it's waiting to hear what people are actually talking about and scraping that information. It collects it together, categorizes the discussions, adding context. When did it happen? What's the metadata about it? And then it creates a file outcome that can be stored for further analysis and integration. So, just think of it as like a piece of software that's constantly listening for something that's relevant to our business. So one of the things, that we've talked about already is this idea of topic extraction. So we're interested in what are the main topics. Imagine I'm a politician and I'm going on prime time tonight and I want to know what people are talking about, in the coffee shop. So we have a crawler that looks at social media and all web pages and it extracts information and it actually identifies what the relevant topics are. So it gives me clusters of information that people are talking about. So we know what people are talking about today. They're talking about the weather and, they're talking about, sentiment might be around, well, why didn't they issue the red alert sooner? Why didn't the university, when is the university going to, make a decision as to when it's going to close or whatever? And we can reflect on these topics and say, well, so when we're actually go on to the media to talk about them, we can hit the important topics that people are concerned about. So the topic extractor, will identify words, what are the top words that are appearing, So then we can actually, put a clustering algorithm together and identify what the themes that people are actually talking about. So, we can actually see that there's a whole lot of words that are coming up are actually synonyms of each other. So people are talking about, they're talking about snow, they're talking about ice, they're talking about traffic, they're talking about indecision, they don't know what to do, they're concerned for the elderly. And we can bring all these topics, and we can identify what the hot topics that people are talking about are. And that's gives us hugely valuable information for say politicians or for marketing people. If you're trying to do your topic, do your advertising, make sure it's concurrent. So one of the KFC ads in Ireland now is where there's been a story about there being no chicken for KFC in England. So they've realised people are talking about this. So they've actually brought out an advertisement in Ireland to say that this doesn't apply in Ireland. It's fake news. Not to worry about it. Loads of chicken available in Ireland. So they've realised what the hot topics on social media are and they're responding to them. So to collect. So data sources are different. So in terms of closeness to the topic of interest. So Facebook is really broad. It could be everything from cats to politics to space exploration. Every single topic you imagine is on Facebook. The blogs are an awful lot easier because they're on a specific topic. So, what we want to store is we need an archive where our data goes. if we've our own listening system, we need a framework where that data is named, classified, and categorized with the appropriate tags. So, pre-processing and integration. So we need to actually have a structure in place so that we know what our data is, where it's come from, what the connections between the data actually is. So, with the third party, it's a contract that will access and create the files. So, we follow whatever structure they have and they give it to us. A lot of times now with cloud storage, we're never actually getting the data, we're just accessing it through the internet. So if the data is bought, some aggregator, third-party feeds, brings all the information together, they create a file, and then we create the metadata, the data about the data around it. And then, we apply tags, so we apply labels to the data, and we classify and categorize it. So we'll talk a little bit more about classification and categorization in a minute. So, next step. So we've acquired the data, and we're collecting it, we're storing it, and then we need to refine it. So that's, taking the disparate data. So what we need to do is increase the awareness and understanding of what we have. So we need to know what information do we actually have. But we're also interested in data variability and redundancy. So, we want one single version of the truth. We also want to get rid of redundancy. So if I have, 6 profiles for Roger Sweetman based on Facebook, Twitter, email, Instagram, whatever, we need to cut that out and actually focus so that we've only got one master record for one person and eliminate kind of different files in different parts of the organization. So we have a single view of the truth. So and the purpose of that is we're creating an integrated data resource. So all our different datas are actually together. So data is in plural, so we don't have data as we just have datum and data. But we need to integrate that together so different people can access it. So all this different stuff, all the disparate data is raw material, and the integrated data resource is the final product of the refinement process. So what we have is a single version of the truth. We don't have redundancy. We've got rid of degraded old data. Everything is up to date, and it's as accurate as we can make it. So we want to get rid of noise. So incomplete data. So if we have a form, a customer service form, and 1,000 people fill it in, but only 500 people fill it in a meaningful way, and the other 500 just fill in a couple of fields, we want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of all the joke, the silly ones, where people fill it out like Bart Simpson ringing Moe's Diner in The Simpsons, with a silly name. You want to get rid of all that stuff. Then we have to enhance it. We need to add the metadata information. So what are the attributes and ownerships? What do we know about it? When were pictures taken? What's the location of particular information? So we add all that metadata to it, and it creates a much richer version of what we have. So we need to validate it. So, what's accurate? So things like public domain data needs to be censored for language prior to, we need to remove maybe foul language. We also, we need to ensure that it's, we're running, if all our tweets, we need to make sure all our tweets are in English if we're running a text analysis based on English language. And then, we go along and we create this kind of processing workflow. And we're going to talk about this kind of classification and categorization in a minute. The whole idea is that, we now have a single version of our data that has some kind of integrity. Okay, so I think that's a good point to stop at that one, and we're going to talk about classification and categorization and finish this process over the next couple of 15-minute slots. Okay. Just remember, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Moodle discussion boards, or also to drop me an email. I know this isn't ideal because there's a lot of content been delivered, so we'll do a quick summary of it next week, and it's really important that if you have any questions that you ask them about the stuff, because this model is examinable.